All right. Well, welcome everybody. Great to have you here today. Our wonderful Ukiah community here, Center for Spiritual Living. And my name is Jack Hall. I am your presider and practitioner today. And it's great to have you all here. And we have a wonderful guest speaker again and wonderful music. And I will ask you to mute your phones if you have any in the background. We're all muted anyway, so I don't think we have to worry about that. And I'm going to go ahead and open us up here with a treatment this morning. Open our hearts and our minds and connect us to that which we already are always. So I welcome you to make this treatment your own. I'll do it in the first person. And in this moment right now, there is only one perfect expression that is the wonderful life I am living and experiencing in each moment. This wonderful life is that ever-present, vast, infinite, loving expression that is God, that is that force, ever-present force, that ever-present voice, that perfect expression in all that I see, am, and experience. So I know that this incredible gift of life is offering me constantly new opportunities to hone it, to see it anew, to shed this the human shortcomings that I experience, which are rooted in fear and separation of this one life. So I invite myself constantly to breathe in a greater moment, a greater thought, a greater opening and awareness of the vastness of this life experience, and that I can choose and chisel and claim and express anew when something isn't working, when something's challenging me and causing me frustration or causing me to separate from it. I know there's an opportunity to reconnect, to deepen, to grow, and to appreciate the challenge that exists, that in that moment, there's a greater opportunity. So I open my ears to that greater guide within, that ever-present calling, that ever-present loving voice, expressive voice, creative voice, magnificent, ever-present friend, that ever-present lover of life. And I welcome it. I listen clearly, and I let go of my shallow mind, my fear-based mind, and open up to the loving opportunity and loving creation that I choose to express now in this moment. So that is the gift of this path of life. And it is a long path. So I know I will be practicing and practicing. I'll be missing the mark and I'll pull out another arrow and try again. And in that I get stronger, I get clearer, and I create even better. So thank you for this moment to express, to clarify, to strengthen, and to put that out there in the universe to support me as I go. I'm never alone. And I walk this life hand in hand with spirit. And I am so grateful. And I release this with joy and gratitude and a deepening love of my life and this moment. And together we say, and so it is. So in this moment, I want to welcome our wonderful musician, Madge Strong, who's going to sing us in. So I will mute, and Madge, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Jack. As it sometimes quite often happens, my song is an echo of some of Jack's words that he just said so beautifully. So this is a song by Harmony Grisman. It's called Kateka Yelir, and she heard this on the radio that it means, I think it's in some South American native tongue, it means, I am another you. The thoughts of the earth are my thoughts, and the voice of the earth is my voice. There are no backwaters here, and only one river to cross. And the point of all this practicing is to waken from a dream of some separate self. There is no separate self. Katekayelir, I am another you. Katekayelir, you are another me. Katekayelir. The song of the earth is my song, and the dance of the earth is my dance. There are no backwaters here, and only one river to cross. And the point of all this practicing is to waken from a dream of some separate self. There is no separate self. Katekayelir, I am another you. Katekayelir, you are another me. Katekayelir. And the point of all this practicing is to waken from a dream. Thank you.
That was perfect. Oh my God, I love it. That's a really beautiful song, Madge. That has to go into the repertoire, I think, somewhere. That's a precious one and a great message. Obviously, it did tie in perfectly. So I am really excited to introduce our speaker today, Clovice Lewis, who we're getting a trilogy experience with Clovice. We had a wonderful experience last week and a great message all along these lines, and look forward to it again. And we will be also enjoying him next weekend as well, next Sunday. So I'm going to introduce you, Clovice, and welcome, and thank you for being here. And he's going to introduce himself a little today too. So we look forward to hearing more about you, Clovice, too. A little background.
Thank you very much, Jack. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Clovice Lewis. Just very briefly, I'm a professional cellist and composer. First touched the cello apparently 50 years ago. I composed my first symphony when I was 17 years old, and as a professor of computer music at UC Santa Barbara from 1978 through 1986. I've been a serial entrepreneur and a software designer for the past 35 years or so. And in addition to music and technology, I've had this lifelong passion for aviation, and I've been a private pilot since 1987. And just recently, I received a Master of Divinity degree from the Star King School for the Ministry in May of this year. And I'm in the process of becoming a Unitarian Universalist minister. And so my ministry emphasizes breaking down racial, class, and ethnic barriers and preaching what I call the gospel of the madness of human self-extinction. So that's what I do. So I'll start with my remarks today. It was a silver plastic toy B-52 Hustler. The real airplane had been introduced into the U.S. Air Force inventory just a few years before. Now, the B-58 was a supersonic, four-engined bomber capable of sustained speeds of over 1,300 miles per hour. It was designed as a high-speed, high-altitude bomber to penetrate Soviet defenses, to deliver a single large thermonuclear bomb that was suspended as a pod underneath the airplane. It was a beautiful airplane. I was 4 years old. And I knew airplanes like other kids now know dinosaurs. So it was an unusually bright morning in the small English village where my family lived. And the year was 1960. I was flying high and fast over the Suds River. I checked the final position with the navigator in the back seat of my bomber, and I said, "Poor guy, he really doesn't have much of a view from his seat." But within seconds, it was time, and I released the bomb slung under the airframe, direct hit on the Suds River. I watched the bomb float on the river like it was an elongated silver cigar. "Wait a minute," I said. "Oh no." Before I could do anything about it, the bomb vanished down the drain where the Suds River terminated from the washing machine inside our house. So at 4 years old, I had just had my first experience with the now all too familiar sinking feeling of loss. You know that feeling. It happens when you drop, then flush your expensive electronic car fob down the toilet. Or you've just wiped out a day's worth of work on your computer. Or when you wish to God you hadn't said that terrible thing that caused the one you love to leave you for good. The first time I took up the spiritual aspects of this subject of loss and disappointment was in the sermon I did last week called Okay God, Part 1. And so today in Part 2, I'm going to revisit the subject with slightly new eyes, or at least with eyes that are a few years older. And I said before, disappointment, pain, resentment, frustration, all natural feelings. I now consider myself lucky to have learned my 10 rules that I told you about when I was all of 33 years old. The 10 rules I'm referring to what I posted on my walls around my desk during my divorce. The first rule, the first 4 rules. First, number 1, people will do whatever they want to do, whether you want them to or not. 2, things will happen the way they will, whether you want them to or not. Number 3, do what you can do with what you got when you got it. And number 4, things are always much worse than you think they are. You just don't know it yet. So lately, I've had many conversations about what I call the gut check. It seems we often know in our guts that we're about to do something that's just not good for us. We know it won't turn out right. We know we're going to go down the wrong path. That person we just started a relationship with is not the right person. We're going to compromise our integrity or values just a little bit for some short-term gain, which can sometimes simply be something that makes us feel good for a few moments. But what happens? We deny our guts. We pretend the feelings are not valid. We do what we know we shouldn't, and then we're hurt or disappointed or even sometimes abused. We do what we know we shouldn't. Sometimes we lose someone or something that's important to us because we plowed full speed ahead, leaving our better judgment trailing behind in tatters. Jan Denise wrote in her book, Innately Good, Dispelling the Myth That You're Not, she said, I compromised my truth to get what somebody else promised. Because when I'm really following my truth, I will be at peace with the consequences, whatever they are. I beg to differ a little with Denise. When we ignore this gut check, we make false promises to ourselves. But we're not at peace with the consequences. The most astonishing thing is that we're then surprised, as if somebody else is the cause of our loss or disappointment. And this is one of the things that's most puzzling about we human beings. The reason why my B-58 lesson was so powerful, that when I was 4 years old, I knew I could lose my thermonuclear bomb. I thought I could be fast enough to rescue it, but deep down, I knew the worst could happen. I suppose you could say that was the first time I can remember having the gut experience also. And then, of course, there was the constant reminder every time I looked at my toy bomber that it was incomplete. So many lifelong lessons to be gleaned from a 1 pound 5 shilling toy. If my parents only knew the many lessons that toy provided me with. But on a much broader and spiritual and level, the issues of loss, resentment, disappointment, emotional pain, frustration, all these things go to the heart of the human experience. Indeed, one might argue that these issues, these extremely powerful human emotions, are the very reasons why we humans invented religion. At the core of all these emotions is a fear of death, either literally or figuratively. To lose someone or something is that's kind of death. I like to say that when we make a decision, we murder the alternative, because that's really the etymology of the word. It's a very powerful concept we don't often appreciate. Yet many of us do not really understand how to make a decision. And from what I can see, many of us are simply afraid of making decisions. The choice of one thing over another often means we cannot dwell on the possibilities the other choice may have offered. It's painful to make a final decision. So many times we vacillate between choices. As you know, that can cause almost exquisite pain. We're often disappointed by decisions. We can come to resent a decision, and the pain of the decision is often more intense than its actual consequences. Indeed, the big D word, death, hangs over the most fundamental religious impulses like the sword of Damocles. And whether describing the little deaths of pain, disappointment, and so on, or an actual literal death, we human beings cannot help but look into an abyss very few of us feel comfortable with. George Melly, the British jazz musician and humanist, on hearing a young person throw out the remark, "Who wants to live till they're 98 anyway?" jokingly answered, "Why, someone of 97, of course." Fear, whether of death or any kind of loss that brings us into spiritual crisis, is powerful enough often to paralyze us. The ability to move beyond that fear takes practice and a lot of self-forgiveness. Now, as a great science fiction fan, I am always reminded of the Bene Gesserit's Litany Against Fear in Frank Herbert's classic book called Dune. The Bene Gesserit is an exclusive sisterhood whose members train their bodies and minds through years of physical and mental conditioning to obtain superhuman powers and abilities that can seem magical to outsiders. Their litany of fear goes like this. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. The relationship between fear and pain and all the emotions associated with pain is essential to an understanding of how we can best deal with those powerful forces in our lives. When I last talked about this subject, I was describing what it felt like to be living in a house that was about to be foreclosed. Carol and I were also at the same time expecting news from investors that might radically change our lives. And the first sermon, entitled Okay God, Part 1, was an exploration of how expectations about life often do not match actual circumstances. The main point of that sermon was that is where pain lives, and that we must free ourselves from its grasp by recognizing that the space between expectation and reality, what it really looks like. Eckhart Tolle, in his book entitled The Power of Now, describes this schism between the pain of fear and the reality of it in this way. He said, the psychological condition of fear is divorced from any concrete and true immediate danger. It comes in many forms: unease, worry, anxiety, nervousness, tension, dread, phobia, and so on. This kind of psychological fear is always of something that might happen, not of something that is happening now. You are in the here and now, while your mind is in the future. This creates an anxiety gap. And if you are identified with your mind and have lost touch with the power and simplicity of the now, that anxiety gap will be your constant companion. You can always cope with the present moment, but you cannot cope with something that is only a mind projection. You cannot cope with the future. According to some, pain, death, frustration, disappointment, all the great drawbacks of the human condition have their root cause in our sinful nature. I reject the notion of sin, even though I acknowledge its role in shaping and guiding human behavior for millennia. I reject the notion of sin as a determinate factor in our lives because I strongly identify with the humanist perspective that we can make decisions based on our free will, and that the progressive exercise of that free will to our individual advancement helps to advance humanity. Now, as a Unitarian Universalist of a distinctly humanist flavor, I personally believe the key to my own happiness is a dogged embrace of the concept of what we call the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And that means I am probably one of the most self-forgiving people you are likely to meet. I make decisions about my life from the standpoint of what is best for both myself and others that will come after me, assuming that others will take equal responsibility for their own actions. That means, while I'm responsible for acting in a manner that holds the highest regard for others, I am not responsible for their feelings about my actions. And this goes to the idea that while I cannot often change the circumstances of my life, I can change my attitude about those circumstances. And this philosophy does not mean that I purposefully attempt to avoid or minimize pain, suffering, disappointment, frustration, and so on. Quite on the contrary, I believe it is good to march directly into disappointment, as Chogyam Trungpa said. He's a monk who said, "We must surrender our hopes and expectations as well as our fears and march directly into disappointment. Work with disappointment. Go into it and make it our way of life," which is a very hard thing to do. Disappointment is a good sign of basic intelligence. It cannot be compared to anything else. It is sharp, precise, obvious, and direct. If we can open, then we suddenly begin to see that our expectations are irrelevant compared with the reality of the situations we are facing. Tolle, Trungpa, Herbert, and other humanists are all pointing in a direction for us. They answer the questions of pain and fear and disappointment with other questions, such as, why don't you face your fears? Why do you let them control your life? Why don't you accept reality for what it is? Why don't you forgive yourself and others? Why don't you make better decisions? Why do you hold on to pain? Why don't you follow your gut? What is stopping you from loving fiercely? Why are you afraid of death in all of its guises? Why do you take yourself so seriously? These are good questions. There's no one size fits them all. They don't always produce an answer, but to me, I'll take those questions over answers I get from other sources any day of the week. So now, armed with those questions, I am ready to face whatever the universe brings me, to embrace whatever the universe has for me as a partner. So I'll end this talk today as I did the first one. Okay, God, universe, higher power, whatever, I get it. Whatever it is, bring it on. I'll kick its butt too. Namaste.
So, Clovis, are you doing a closing treatment, or is that
Oh yes, I'll do a treatment.
wonderful? I appreciate it. That's great.
God, spirit, oneness, whatever term that fits best for you, that's the ultimate. Limitless patience, presence, and power in the universe. God, spirit, oneness is all there is. Because I accept that you and I and God are one. We are one with God, spirit, oneness, now. We already know that we are part of God and God is part of us. We realize without doubt or reservation that the good that we desire to experience is now taking form through infinite power. We know our desires are complete and we accept the fullness of manifestation. We thankfully accept that the good we desire is ours right now. We accept and we give thanks for this good right now and right here. We accept this good as already accomplished, and we release our prayer to the activity of the universe, completely freeing ourselves of that or any other concern. We let go, and we let God, Spirit, oneness We release this truth in total belief that it is done. And as we say, and so it is.
Okay. Wonderful. Clovice. Boy, I can't wait for part 3. That was cool. This is a great experience and a great message for all of us, I know,
Thank you.
on this human journey we all have. So lovely. And just to be respectful of time, so Madge is going to sing us out here, and then we're going to do our offering treatment. We're doing a little bit of a switch here just to be mindful of Madge's time. So go ahead, Madge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, I appreciate that because I am singing at a memorial gathering shortly and have to do a last minute rehearsal. So, yeah. And I know that people like to sing along with a familiar song, so I'm going to do Imagine. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries, it isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. Ooh, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger, a brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. Ooh, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Thank you.
Awesome. That was beautiful and perfect.
Thank you,
Always good
Clovice and
to sing
Jack.
that song. Thank you, Madge.
All right, goodbye.
Have a lovely rest of the day.
Thanks.
Goes smoothly. And yeah. All right. So we're going to now do our offering affirmation, as we just switched it up a little bit. So Mary, if you've got that, if you can put it up on the screen, that would be great. And I know that it's just Mary and Larry, I think, at the sanctuary, but the baskets are there in the back. and for all of you, really appreciate your support of this center. It's an important part of the energy and life of a center is to give and to be a part and to share your gifts, your talents, your coin. It's all energy. And it's very important to moving things forward and to the life and health of our community. So we appreciate your participation, and you can also, do this through the website, cslukiah.org. There's a PayPal site there, and you can pay that way or set things up through your bill pay with your bank. But anyway, here's the affirmation. Since it's not popping up, I will say it, and we all know it. So if you'll join me in this: divine love through me blesses and multiplies this gift. With all my heart and with all my mind, I know that I am saying yes to something I value. With all others present here, we dedicate these gifts to the values and visions we all share. So that's that. And I want to move into our announcements. And so we are continuing our Sunday services on Zoom as we're experiencing right now. And as well, you can also come to the center, which is definitely a wonderful way to enjoy even a deeper way of being in community. And obviously right now we have mask mandates in place in California, so masks are important. We do have masks at the center. And if you have any questions, there's on the website and actually in the newsletter too, I believe we have, the link to the COVID-19 California Gov site that talks about that. Really important announcement today. We have a very important meeting coming up on the 3rd of October, a gathering that we hope you will all participate in person at the center. And obviously, if you can't, Zoom will be fired up and running as well. But this is an important discussion about our ongoing decisions to clarify and hone our center, our purpose, our mission, our vision for it, and how we are proceeding. And so we have identified 4 possible, and we're going to be doing this over the next, months ahead going into the new year. But we have 4 possibilities, which include continuing looking for a traditional minister to be a part of the center, to look for a distance minister, to become a satellite for a larger center, and or to leave CSL and do something independent, a study group or the like. So Dr. Candace, Reverend Dr. Candace will be available to explain these options on the 3rd, and it is extremely important to attend. So please mark your calendars. And we're going to have these monthly meetings going on, as I mentioned, until June. So until we come up with greater clarity, and I'm knowing and asking all of you to put that in your daily treatments.